I'm going to talk a bit slow.
Oh,
Yes.
very good. We probably should be live by now.
Okay. Hello and welcome to Moreness-Culture. Good morning, Syl. Good morning, Grain. I am expecting Grain to be here. And good mornings to everyone who is going to join us live and will watch us recorded later. Please, if you find
Good
us
morning.
by any chance or deliberately, if you find us and you see some value, you find some value in this video, please do make a deliberate choice of giving your online algorithm a reminder that this is something you like, because
Yes,
we cannot
yes.
live our life as just randomly. We do make deliberate choice and we have to make deliberate choices. This is the key of really mindful living is all about. This is what the peace of being is all about. This is what the mourners life is all about, to make deliberate choices.
Oh,
This is what we are all about. Still always share, and everything from Moreness project and from the Way of Impeccability, everything is about making deliberate choices. And what happens when we make deliberate choice? When we are deliberately doing anything, like setting our intent, taking some actions, making a choice. Choices is also an action, of course. Even not choosing is also a choice. We are not choosing it. So, this is what we are making a deliberate choice. Every deliberate action, when we do that, when we are aware of it, it means that we are making a statement. We are declaring that this is something I want. This is the absolute clarity this is the absolute clear gesture we can show to the universe. And of course, when we make a deliberate choice, we can claim a result, a positive result and outcome of this also. Because once in the past, I made a deliberate choice. Now, what I'm reaping is my fruit. I can claim it because it was a deliberate choice in the past I made to write my future in this particular way. This is how the mindful living is all about. This is how the way of impeccability is. This is how the mourners living is, to make deliberate choices, to claim the positive, specific outcome or result of it. This is the magic of way of impeccability. People do talk about law of attraction. Of course, I was also very interested in this, and still, because it has some value, of course, but also to glorify it, to make it more interesting, more attractive for people. Some people just get into a different side of it, like actions and gestures go a bit on a side burner or back burner. But all is just wishing. Way of impeccability and moreness is more than that. It's not just hoping for something, it's actually articulating your future. It is about really, really establishing your future. This is what you want. And not just for the superficial things and desires and wishes, but it is about the core and the basic of the human character. This is what we want. Everything else is just, of course, the byproduct of it. You can have what you really want, and it will come. Everything will come to you, but it has to be your deliberate choice. So, this was my thought of the day. And this is, I just love about talking about these things because
deliberate
this is,
choice. That's
yes,
huge, Beena.
yes.
Deliberate choice is huge, 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 huge. I mean,
As
that's
we
a
can
massive
see,
topic and it's very, very important.
oh, yes, oh, yes. And as we can see, that cell is
In
sitting in
everything,
mountains.
deliberate choice.
Yes, cell is sitting there in mountains, and we can see that, okay, how the air would be crisp there, and chill. Yeah.
So I have my scarf on. This is a very good scarf, by the way. It's
Yes.
a circular scarf, just like an elastic. You slip it over, and it's just fantastic. I always wear scarves in winter because this is where you lose a lot of heat over here. And
Yeah.
this is just a phenomenal, really wonderful, genius thing. So I love it. I love it. Very cool. But yeah, this is actually in Arizona.
Wow.
Yes, yes. So I mean, I could be there. It's somewhere here
Ah,
near me. I don't know exactly where, but For when we're doing the Carlos books, right? Because many of them take place in Arizona and Mexico, and northern Mexico in the desert, just similar to here, right? Sonora Desert now. So that's why I specifically choose backgrounds to match this. I like having matching things. So important to be matching and appropriate. All right, we'll get going in a moment, and we'll actually continue our reading. We were lost. We we tried to get to continue, but we got distracted with topics, and there were wonderful topics of discussion, about being a heretic and about uh, believed value versus actual value. And that's a very, very important distinction. Yes. Those were, so we ended up doing the whole live on those topics, and we never got to the reading. But now we are going to continue. So where we are, Don Juan has had Carlos smoke the mixture again. But this time, not to go into seeing the Guardian and getting past the Guardian and going into that whole world. No, he wants Carlos to focus on using his will, and that's the key here, right? So we've got this focus of Don Juan on will and how important it is. Yeah, and also Carlos does. He sort of doesn't quite understand appropriately, and he gets things a bit muddled. But he's getting there slowly but surely. For all Carlos's nincompoopery, he does actually learn, right? He does actually learn in his own weird way. Carlos is a very odd bird. He's a very peculiar fish. But that's part of the magic of Carlos because he is so weird. This makes him share and makes Don Juan do everything, and you get to see pretty much the full scope and range of all of Don Juan's understanding, his cosmology, which is his understanding of how the universe works. I call it his cosmology, which is important, right? It's not just your underlying psychology and the underlying character training, which is the absolute most important part of Don Juan's teachings, is the character training. And then he has other techniques and tools and other realities and the power plants. Those are all additional to the character training. That's the core, the impeccability. That's the start, the core. You need that in order to do capital P perceiving. For will, you need that. You need that for accessing alternate realities if you so wish. So all of it is dependent on impeccability, right? He calls it the warrior's way. I call it way of impeccability. Yeah. And the only reason that I do this, well, two reasons, not the only reason. One, warrior is as baggage, the term. In way of impeccability, I use the term spirit warrior. And even that, some people struggle with a little bit, right? But okay, there is a whole section in way of impeccability where you develop your own self-conception, where you're going to be a spirit explorer, a life adventurer, whatever it is, doesn't matter, right? But it's to have a conception that makes sense for you. That's not a limiting definition. But way of impeccability goes further than the warrior's way, and it makes things very clear that otherwise aren't that clear, like attunement and self-conception, association management, mood management, a lot of things like that. So it's taking the warrior's way and going further with it, and also not only going further, but also taking the warrior's way and conceptualizing it where those conceptions become usable, like attunement. Don Juan talks about it, but he doesn't use the concept, the term attunement. And this greatly hampers the understanding of it, right? So that conceptuality is about in-depth, full, comprehensive understanding, which is what we aim. Because when you fully understand, you can apply, right? Otherwise, application is difficult, right, Beena? Beena's muted, talking to herself.
Your sound is not going through, so say it something.
Oh, I was saying a
Okay.
lot of things. I just said you were muted, so I didn't hear your response there. Yeah.
No, 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 no. I was listening,
Oh, all right, all right,
but
all
after
right.
that, your sound just gets like it faded.
All
Yes.
right. Well, no worries. Well, we're going to continue our
Share
reading here.
screen.
So to screen share,
Yes.
and let me turn off the sound. There we go. All right, very good. And we are at this point where Carlos, we got an example while Carlos was under the smoking mixture with the intent of practicing his will. At least this was Don Juan's intent, to get him to use his will to move. He also, capital P, perceived Don Juan's face. He saw the energy of it. It's alive and it doesn't look anything
Yes.
like a normal face, and the movement inside, right? And he's perceiving energy directly. And this was quite profound because it is a nice description of perceiving energy directly. Now, Don Juan is taking him to the water, the irrigation ditch behind his house there, and he washes him to kind of cleanse him, right? Just to restore his energy. But now, well, before he does this, he gets Carlos to gaze at the water, and we have more and gazing is very important. We're going to see this. It's a power term in Don Juan's vocabulary. It means more than just the regular gazing, right? So now we are going to get more examples of capital P perceiving. It's very exciting, right? All right. So I'll read and then you read again, right? So I did not but we stopped at the irrigation. Now gaze at the water, and you carry on, Beena.
Okay. I need to just adjust a bit of my screen because your picture was too
Oh.
big. And yes.
Now gaze at the water.
Okay. Now gaze at the water. Don Juan
Ah,
ordered.
Beena.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yes.
Seriously?
Please can.
Ah, now gaze at the
Sorry.
water.
I looked at the water, but I could not gaze at it. Somehow the movement of the current distracted me. Don Juan kept on urging me in a joking manner to exercise my gazing powers, but I could not concentrate. I gazed at Don Juan's face once again, but the glow did not become apparent for anymore. I began to experience a strange itching on my body, the sensation of a limb that has fallen asleep. The muscles of my legs began to twitch. Don Juan shoved me into the water and I tumbled down all the way to the bottom. He had apparently held my right hand as he pushed me, and when I hit the shallow bottom, he pulled me up again. It took a long time for me to regain control over myself. When we got back to his house hours later, I asked him to explain my experience. As I put on my dirty clothes, I excitedly
Up,
described
up,
what
my
I
dry
had.
clothes.
Oh, sorry. As I put on my dry clothes, I excitedly described that I what I had perceived, but he discarded my entire account, saying that there was nothing of importance in it.
Big deal. You saw a glow. Big deal. Dang, Don Juan, that's mean.
I insisted on an explanation, and he got up and said he had to leave. It was almost 5 in the afternoon. The next day, I insisted again on discussing my peculiar experience. Was it perceiving, Don Juan? I asked. He remained quiet, smiling mysteriously as I kept pressing him to answer me.
Let's say that perceiving is something like that. You were gazing at my face and saw it shining, but it was still my face. It just happens that the little smoke makes one gaze like that. Nothing to it.
But in what way would perceiving be different?
When you perceive, there are no longer familiar features in the world. Everything is new. Everything has never happened before. The world is incredible.
Why do you say incredible, Don Juan? What makes it incredible?
Nothing, nothing is any longer familiar. Everything you gaze at becomes nothing. Yesterday you didn't perceive. You gazed at my face, and since you like me, you noticed my glow. I was not monstrous like the guardian. but beautiful and interesting. But you did not perceive me. I didn't become nothing in front of you, and yet you did well. You took the first step towards perceiving. The only drawback was that you focused on me, and in that case, I'm no better than the guardian for you. You succumbed in both instances and didn't perceive. Let's just pause here. What do we think
Yes.
Don Juan means with succumbed?
Yes. No idea.
All right. With the guardian, the issue was fear. With Don
Hmm.
Juan, the issue is liking. What is the abstract between both of them? Emotional connection. And
Oh,
that
yes.
emotional connectivity leads to interpretation. See? Perceiving is when you let go of your expectations. Fear, like, has an expectation to it. It has an interpretive quality to it, which means you are translating. You're not seeing the thing for itself. You're translating. Make sense?
Yes.
Right?
Still someone is, yes. Okay. Someone at Instagram saying hello, my friend. So please.
Oh, brilliant. Hello, hello, Instagrammer. Hello, hello, hello. Wonderful. Let's go and see. Who is that? Who is that there? Who is that? NL underscore dot GS. Oh, yeah, it's an S, not a five.
G5.
Yeah. Oh,
G5.
G5. Okay. Okay. Well, hello, hello, NL. We'll just call you NL. And Ellie Mua joined us. And it said, I don't know what's happened to our TikTok. It was going automatically, and then it stopped going automatically. So I don't know what's up with it. Yeah, we tried to go there. An error occurred. Please try again. So I don't know. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, so sorry, TikTok. We tried. I tried to get the TikTok up, but we'll see again. Anyway, so hello everybody. I love this, but I want to get back to this, to the succumbing, right? So
Yes.
perceiving, in order to perceive energy directly, we have to unhook from all of our expectations, our interpretations, our assumptions. Yeah, because that's what we
Yeah.
do. We take the energy and we filter it, we translate it. Yeah, and then we get
Yes.
what is our normal reality or some version of it. And you see why Don Juan says succumbed? He's not making it
Mm.
very clear that Carlos is succumbing to interpretation, to expectation, to assumption, etc. Right? Translation,
Mm.
filtering. You have to switch all of that off. And later he's going to make this more clear. But right now, not, right? It's very interesting to me how this comes about, in terms of uh, Don Juan's explanation that unless Carlos is just writing it in these different ways, that he doesn't quite make it very clear, which is a pity. Which is a pity. All right. You succumbed in both instances and didn't perceive. Beena, are you muted?
I was just checking
Oh,
on YouTube. Okay.
oh, see. All
But
right. Let's
your
continue then.
screen is disturbing me. You chat. Okay, now it is good. Okay. Where it was. Okay.
Yeah, the do things disappear.
Okay. Do things disappear? How do they become nothing?
Things don't disappear, they don't vanish, if that's what you mean. They simply become nothing, and yet they are still there.
How can that be possible, Don Juan?
You have the damnedest insistence on talking. I think we didn't hit it right about your promise. Perhaps what you really promised was to never ever stop talking.
Don Juan's tone was severe. The look in his face was concerned. I wanted to laugh, but I did not dare. I believed that Don Juan was serious, but he was not. He began to laugh. I told him that if I did not talk, I got very nervous.
Let's walk then.
He took me to the mouth of a canyon at the bottom of the hills. It was about an hour's walk. We rested for a short while, and then he guided me through the thick desert underbrush to a waterhole. To the thick desert underbrush to a waterhole. That is, to a spot he said was a waterhole. It was as dry as any other spot in the surrounding area.
Sit in the middle of the waterhole.
I obeyed and sat down. Are you going to sit here too? I saw him fixing a place to sit some 20 yards from the center of the waterhole against the rocks on the side of the mountain. Will you please scroll, sir?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think it's just a
Yes.
delay, the
Oh,
lag.
he said he was going to watch me from there. I was sitting with my knees against my chest. He corrected my position and told me to sit with my left leg tucked under my seat and my right one bent, with the knee in an upward position. My right arm had to be by my side with my fist resting on the ground, while my left arm was crossed over my chest. He told me to face him and stay here, relaxed but not abandoned. He then took a sort of whitish cord from his pouch. It looked like a big loop. He looped it around his neck and stretched it with his left hand until it was taut. Taut, okay. He plucked the tight string with his right hand. It made a dull, vibratory sound. He relaxed his grip and looked at me and told me that I had to yell a specific word if I began to feel that something was coming at me when he plucked the string. I asked what was supposed to come at me, and he told me to shut up. He signaled me with his hand that he was going to commence. He said that if something came at me in a very menacing way, I had to
Menacing,
adopt
menacing.
menacing. Okay, he came at me in a very menacing way. I had to adopt a fighting form that he had taught me years before, which consisted of dancing, beating the ground with the tip of the left foot, while I slapped my right thigh vigorously. The fighting form was part of a defense technique used in cases of extreme distress and danger. I had a moment of genuine apprehension. I wanted to inquire about the reason for our being there, but he did not give me time and began plucking the string. He did it various times at regular intervals of perhaps 20 seconds. I noticed that as he kept plucking the string, he augmented the tension. I could clearly see that his arm and neck were shivering under the stress. The sound became more clear, and I realized then that he added a peculiar yell every time he plucked the string. The combined sound of the tense string and the human voice produced a weird, unearthly reverberation. I did not feel anything coming at me, but the sight of Don Juan's exertion and the eerie sound he was producing had made me almost in a state of trance. Don Juan relaxed his grip and looked at me. While he played, his back was turned to me and he was facing the southeast, as I was. When he relaxed, he faced me. Don't look at me when I play, he said.
Ask me. Don't look at me when I play. And don't close your eyes, though. Not for anything. Look at the ground in front of you and listen.
He tensed the string again and began playing. I looked at the ground and concentrated on the sound he was making. I had never heard this sound before in my life. I became very frightened. The eerie reverberation filled the narrow canyon and began to echo. In fact, the sound Don Juan was making was coming back to me as an echo from all around the canyon walls. Don Juan must have also noticed that. and increased the tension of his string. Although Don Juan had changed the pitch, the echo seemed to subside, and then it seemed to concentrate on one point, toward the southeast. Don Juan reduced the tension of the string by degrees until I heard a final dull twang. He put the string inside his pouch and walked toward me. He helped me stand up. I noticed then that the muscles of my arms and legs were stiff, like rocks. I was literally soaked in perspiration. I had no idea I had been perspiring so heavily. Drops of sweat ran into my eyes and made them burn. So Don Juan practically dragged me out of the place. I tried to say something, but he put his hand over my mouth. Instead of leaving the canyon the way we had come in, Don Juan made a detour. We climbed the side of the mountain and ended up up in some hills very far from the mouth of the canyon. We walked in dead silence to his house. It was already dark by the time we got there. I tried to talk again, but Don Juan put his hand on my mouth once more. We did not eat and did not light the kerosene lantern. Don Juan put my mat in his room and pointed at it with his chin. I understood it as a gesture that I should lie down and go to sleep. I have the
I
proper
have
thing,
the proper thing for you to do.
Don Juan said to me as soon as I woke up the next morning.
You will start it today. There isn't much time, you know.
After a very long, uneasy pause, I felt compelled to ask him, "What did you have me doing in the canyon yesterday?" Don Juan giggled like a child.
I just tapped the spirit of that waterhole. That type of spirit should be tapped when the waterhole is dry, when the spirit has retreated into the mountains. Yesterday I, let us say, woke him up from his slumber, but he didn't mind it and pointed to your lucky direction. His voice came from that direction.
Don Juan pointed toward the southeast. What was the string you played, Don Juan?
A spirit catcher.
Can I look at it?
No, but I'll make you one, or better yet, you will make one for yourself some day, when you learn to perceive.
What is it made of, Don Juan?
Mine is a wild boar. When you get one, you will realize that it is alive and can teach you the different sounds it likes. With practice, you will get to know your spirit catcher so well that together you will make sounds full of power.
Why don't you take me to look for the spirit of the waterhole, Don Juan?
You will know that very soon.
Around 11:30 a.m., we sat under his ramada, which where he prepared his pipe for me to smoke. He told me to stand up when my body was quite numb. I did that with great ease. He helped me walk around. I was surprised at my control. I actually walked twice around the ramada by myself. Don Juan instead stayed by my side, but did not guide me or support me. Then he took me by the arm and walked me to the irrigation ditch. He made me sit on the edge of the bank and ordered me imperatively to gaze at the water and think of nothing else.
One moment here, Beena. It's very interesting here. Just from a
Yes,
writing point of view, right?
yes.
Carlos says, around 11:30 we sat under his ramada where he prepared his pipe for me to smoke. Right? He told me to stand up when my body was quite numb. He doesn't say he did smoke, right? There's a jump here in the continuity, right?
Ah,
You see what I mean? Like he told me to stand
yes.
up when my body was quite numb. Uh, he hasn't said he smoked yet. So I at first thought, like, wow, did his body go numb just from waiting or what? It was a bit confusing. So it's just important to pay attention to those things, right? You have to make it clear, right? All right. So where were we? He made me sit on the edge of the bank and ordered me imperatively to gaze at the water and nothing else. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Beena. I tried to focus.
I tried to focus my gaze on the water, but its movement distracted me. My mind and my eyes began to wander onto other features of
Wonder.
the immediate wander. Okay. Uh, began to wander onto other features of the immediate surrounding. Don Juan bobbed my head up and down and ordered me again to gaze only at the water and not think at all. He said it was difficult to stare at the moving water and that one had to keep on trying. I tried 3 times and every time I became distracted by surrounding else, by something else. Don Juan very patiently shook my head every time. Finally, I noticed that my mind, my eyes were focusing on the water. In spite of its movement, I was becoming immersed in my view of its liquidness. The water became slightly different. As it seemed to be heavier and uniformly grayish green. I could notice the ripples it made as it moved. The ripples were extremely sharp. And then suddenly I had the sensation that I was not looking at a mass of moving
Mess.
water.
Mess.
Mass, okay. Looking at a mass of moving water, but at a picture of water. That I had in front of my eyes was a frozen segment of the running water. The ripples were immobile. I could look at every one of them. Then they began to acquire a green phosphorescence,
Phosphorescence.
okay, phosphorescence, and a
No,
sort of green
phosphorescence.
phosphorescence,
Hmm.
a green phosphorescence, and a sort of green fog oozed out of them. The fog expanded in ripple as it moved, and as it moved, its greenness became more brilliant until it was a dazzling radiance that covered everything. I don't know how long I stayed by the irrigation ditch. Don Juan did not interrupt me. I was immersed in the green glow of the fog. I could sense it all around me. It soothed me. I had no thoughts, no feelings. All I had was a quiet awareness, the awareness of a brilliant, soothing greenness.
All right. So this is very important here, right?
Yes.
For once, Carlos has no thoughts and no feelings. It's new for him, right? It's very important as this is crucial to capital P perceiving. Yeah. Yeah. Please continue.
Okay. Being extremely cold and damp was the next thing I became aware of. Gradually, I realized that I was submerged in the irrigation ditch. At one moment, the water slipped inside my nose and I swallowed it, and it made me cough. I had an annoying itch inside my nose and I sneezed repeatedly. I stood up and had such a forceful and loud sneeze that I also farted. Don Juan clapped his hands and laughed. If a body
If a
farts,
body
it's alive.
farts, it's alive. If a body farts, it's alive. All right. That's not really true. Dead bodies actually fart also. There's a
Oh,
buildup of
okay.
gas once they're dead, and then also fart. But Don Juan is making the point about intentionality, right? So, all right, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Keep going.
Okay. He signaled me to follow him and we walked to his house. I thought of keeping quiet. In a way, I expected to be in a detached and morose mood. What is morose?
Morose mood. Morose is
Yeah.
like gloomy and down,
Okay.
morose.
And
Yeah.
morose mood. But I really did not feel tired or melancholy. I felt rather buoyant and changed my clothes very rapidly. I began to whistle. Don Juan looked at me curiously and pretended to be surprised. He opened his mouth and his eyes. His gesture was very funny, and I laughed quite a bit longer than it called for.
You're cracking up.
He said and laughed very hard himself. I explained to him that I did not want to fall into the habit of feeling morose after using his smoking mixture.
Morose, morose,
Morose,
morose,
morose,
morose,
morose, morose, morose,
morose,
morose.
morose. Not moros,
Okay,
morose.
morose,
There we go.
morose. Okay,
Morose.
into the
Yeah.
habit of feeling morose after using the smoking mixture. I told him that after he had taken me out of the irrigation ditch during my attempts to meet the guardian, I had become convinced that I could perceive if I stared at things around me long enough.
Perceiving is not a matter of looking and keeping quiet. Perceiving is a technique one has to learn. Or maybe it is a technique some of us already know.
He peered at me as of as if to institute that I was one of those who already
To
knew the technique.
insinuate.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. He peered at me as if to insinuate that I was one of those who already knew the technique.
Are you strong enough to walk?
I said I felt fine, which I did. I was not hungry, although I had not eaten all day. Don Juan put some bread and some pieces of dry meat in a knapsack,
Nap.
handed it to
Yeah,
me,
knapsack.
and gestured with his head for me to follow. Where are we going? He pointed toward the hills with a slight movement of his head. We headed for the same canyon where the waterhole was, but we did not enter it. Don Juan climbed onto the rocks to our right. At the very mouth of the canyon, we went up the hill. The sun was almost on the horizon. It was a mild day, but I felt hot and suffocated. I could hardly breathe. Don Juan was quite a way ahead of me, and had to stop to let me catch up with him. He said I was in terrible physical condition and that it was perhaps not wise to go any further. He let
Beena,
me rest.
I just want to give you
Yes?
a bit of a break. We switch a bit here, right? I feel like you're getting a bit tired with the reading, or no? You all right?
No, no. I am deliberately trying to read slowly.
Oh, slower, not slowly, slower. All right, all right, all right. Just read relaxedly, read relaxedly. We
Yeah,
are
this is what I'm
practicing
trying.
reading skills, like professional reading skills, because we are doing the reading for the audiobook, right? The RSPL audiobook. And so we are practicing, in addition to reading this and doing capital R reading, we're also practicing professional reading, which is a different thing, like expressive reading, right? All right, so
Yes.
I'm gonna spell you a little bit. I'm gonna read a little bit, and then we'll switch back again, right? Just to give you a break. And it's just I want to do this for the ear attunement, to give your ear
Okay.
something to listen to, and then right to use that as a gauge to for yourself to have something to utilize, right? Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yes.
All right. Don Juan was quite a way ahead of me and had to stop to let me catch up with him. He said I was in terrible physical condition and that it was perhaps not wise to go any further. He let me rest for about an hour. He selected a slick, almost round boulder and told me to lie there. He arranged my body on the rock. He told me to stretch my arms and legs and let them hang loose. My back was slightly arched and my neck relaxed, so that my head also hung loose. He made me stay in that position for perhaps 15 minutes. Then he told me to uncover my abdominal region. He carefully selected some branches and leaves and heaped them over my naked belly. I felt an instantaneous warmth all over my body. Don Juan then took me by the feet and turned me until my head was towards the southeast. Now, oh, you read this. You read Don Juan.
Where it is, sir? I was just listening.
Ah.
Now let us call the spirit of the waterhole.
I tried to turn my head to look at him. He held me vigorously by my hair and said that I was in a very vulnerable position and in a terribly weak physical state, and I had to remain quiet and motionless. He had put all those special branches on my belly to protect me and was going to remain next to me in case I could not take care of myself. He was standing next to the top of my head, and if I rolled my eyes, I could see him. He took his string and tensed it again, and then I realized I was looking at him by rolling my eyes way into my forehead. He gave me a snappy tap on the head with his knuckles and ordered me to look at the sky, not to close my eyes, and to concentrate on the sound. He added, as if on second thought, that I should not hesitate to yell the word he had taught me if I felt something was coming at me. Don Juan and his spirit catcher began with a low tension twang. He slowly increased the tension, and I began to hear a sort of reverberation first, and then a definite echo which came consistently from a southeasterly direction. The tension increased. Don Juan and his spirit catcher were perfectly matched. The string produced a low-range note, and Don Juan magnified it, increasing its intensity until it was a penetrating cry, a howling call. The apex was an eerie shriek, inconceivable from the point of view of my own experience. The sound reverberated into the mountains and echoed back to us. I fancied it was coming directly toward me. I felt it had something to do with the temperature of my body. Before Don Juan started his calls, I had been very warm and comfortable. But during the highest point of his calls, I had become chilled. My teeth chattered uncontrollably, and I truly had the sensation that something was coming at me. At one point, I noticed that the sky had become very dark. I had not been aware of the sky, although I was looking at it. I had a moment of intense panic, and I yelled the word Don Juan had taught me. Don Juan immediately began to decrease the tension of his eerie calls, but did not but that did not bring me any relief.
Cover your ears.
Don Juan mumbled imperatively. I covered them with my hands. After some minutes, Don Juan stopped altogether and came around to my side. After he had taken the branches and leaves off my belly, he helped me up and carefully put them on the rock where I had been lying. He made a fire with them, and while it burned, he rubbed my stomach with other leaves from his pouch. He put his hand to my mouth, and when I was about to tell him that I had a terrible sorry, he put his hand to my mouth when I was about to tell him that I had a terrible headache. We stayed there until all the leaves had burned. It was fairly dark by then. We walked down the hill, and I got sick to my stomach. While we were walking along the irrigation ditch, Don Juan said that I had done enough and I should not stay around. I asked him to explain what the spirit of the waterhole was, but he gestured me to be quiet. He said that we would talk about it some other time. Then he deliberately changed the subject and gave me a long explanation about perceiving. I said it was regrettable I could not write in the darkness. He seemed very pleased and said that most of the time I did not pay attention to what he had to say because I was determined to write everything down. This is a very, very important point. Just in general, when people take notes, they actually lose attention of what they're saying. They just take notes, they're just translating, and they have no awareness of what's going on. If you're going to take notes that summarize, that conceptualize what you are hearing, but you have to be paying attention. Your notes are about making that concentration, that focus, the abstracting, the making sense of it, applying meaning to what you are hearing. Yes. So you are making the notes are also translating it into making it rememberable for you, which is a different thing because we are hearing it in short-term memory. Your notes are about how would this go into my long-term memory. So we have to understand how attention works and memory works. Just pay attention to yourself to be more aware of this, right? A little aside here, but it's very important. And Don Juan has noticed that when Carlos takes notes, he doesn't pay attention, right? He spoke about perceiving as a process independent of the allies and the techniques of sorcery. A sorcerer was a person who could command an ally and could thus manipulate an ally's power to his advantage. But the fact that he commanded an ally did not mean that he could perceive. I reminded him that he had told me before that it was impossible to perceive unless one had an ally. Don Juan very calmly replied that he had come to the conclusion it was possible to perceive and yet not command an ally. Very important point here. Don Juan had stated something very definitively as a rule, and yet it has changed. This is very important to understand. Yes, it's part of Moreness-Culture. Everything is as good as it lasts, meaning that we don't get stuck into things. Even though we firmly believe that this is the absolute, we're always open to change. Nothing is absolute, right? Even though it seems so, even though we treat it as if it were, and it's definitive, doesn't matter. We shift, we change as appropriate, right? And we need to understand this with Don Juan because he says many things in a very definitive way. Nothing is definitive, right? Very key. Very, very, very key. Yeah. Uh, Don Juan very calmly replied that he had come to the conclusion it was possible to perceive and yet not command an ally. He felt there was no reason why not, since perceiving had nothing to do with the manipulatory techniques of sorcery, which served only to act upon our fellow men. The techniques of perceiving, on the other hand, had no effect on people. This is a huge, crucial point that we have to understand that Don Juan has this connection to sorcery, but he's coming also himself to realize that it's not necessary. Later, he's going to make this more clear, more definitive. But right here, we're seeing Don Juan in that transitional phase, right? Very important, very important. My thoughts were very clear. I experienced no fatigue. All right, you read a bit again, Beena, because there's conversation coming, and then we'll go back to me reading Don Juan. You read Carlos. So you read here from my thoughts were very clear. I'll move
Okay.
to the top. Oh, 1 second. 1 second. There we go.
Thoughts were very clear. I experienced no fatigue or drowsiness and no longer had an uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. As I walked with Don Juan, I was terribly hungry, and when we got to his house, I gorged myself with food.
That was nice rhythm. That was nice speed. That was really good.
Okay. Afterwards, I asked him to tell me more about the techniques of perceiving. He smiled broadly at me and said that I was again myself.
How was it? Oh, that's you. Sorry. Go
How
ahead.
is it? I said that the techniques of perceiving have no effect on our fellow men.
I've told you already. Perceiving is not sorcery. Perceiving is not sorcery. Yet one may easily confuse them, because a person who perceives can learn in no time at all to manipulate an ally and become a sorcerer. On the other hand, a man may learn certain techniques in order to command an ally and thus become a sorcerer, and yet he may never learn to perceive. Besides, perceiving is contrary to sorcery. Besides, perceiving is contrary to sorcery. Perceiving makes one realize the unimportance of it all.
The unimportance of what, Don Juan?
The unimportance of everything. In other words, the
We did
whole
not.
world is we've made it artificially important. It just is, right? We make it important because that's superiority paradigm and our assumptions that we have to do this, right? And it's very important this and this distinction and understanding that the sorcery is really just a diversion and it's really not that important. It's very, very important, right? And sorcery, all of the particular alternate realities that go with sorcery. There are other alternate realities that aren't sorcery alternate realities. But typically, when you go into this and all of this stuff, it's not really necessary. It's not really important. And it's just a diversion, and we have to be very careful with it. Like those powers of of the I forget what the Buddhist thing was, right? To understand that you can get caught up in the stuff, the lesser powers of a mage, right? This was very important to understand that these things are big deals, but in the bigger picture, they aren't, and we can get distracted by them, right? And they can subtract from us, right? Right. Please
Okay.
continue, Yabina. We did
We
not.
did not. We did not say anything else. I felt very relaxed and did not want to speak anymore. I was lying on my back on a straw mat. I had made a pillow with my windbreaker. I felt uncomfortable and happy. I felt comfortable and happy and wrote my notes for hours in the night of the kerosene lantern, in the light of the kerosene lantern.
Mm.
All messed up. Okay. We did not say anything else. I felt very relaxed and did not want to speak anymore. I was lying on my back on a straw mat. I had made a pillow with my windbreaker. I felt comfortable and happy and wrote my notes for the hours in the light of the kerosene lantern. Suddenly, Don Juan spoke again.
Today you did very well. You did very well at the water. The spirit of the waterhole likes you and helped you all the way.
I realized then I had forgotten to recount my experience to him. I began to describe the way I had perceived the water. He did not let me continue. He said that he knew I had perceived a green fog. I felt compelled to ask, how did you know that, Don Juan?
I perceived you.
What did I do?
Nothing. You sat there and gazed into the water, and finally you perceived the green mist.
What is perceiving? Was it perceiving?
No, but it was very close. You're getting close.
I got very excited. I wanted to know more about it. He laughed and made fun of my eagerness. He said that anyone could perceive the green fog because it was like like the guardian, something that was unavoidably there. So there was no great accomplishment in perceiving it.
When I said you did well, I meant that you did not fret, as you did with the guardian. If you had become restless, I would have had to shake your head and bring you back. Whenever a person goes into the green fog, his benefactor, their benefactor, is to stay with them in case it begins to trap them. You can jump out of the guardian's reach by yourself, but you can't escape the clutches of the green fog by yourself, at least not in the beginning. And later on, you may learn a way to do it. Now we're trying to find something else.
What are we trying to find out?
Whether you can perceive the water.
How will I know that I have perceived it or that I'm perceiving it?
You will know. You get confused only when you talk. All right.
Working?
Let's pause here. Let's
Okay.
pause here. Let's pause here, right? Or at least let's stop here, right? Because it's a whole long section going on here now, and we're going to get about all the green fog and talking. So we'll come back to this tomorrow.
Mhm.
What is tomorrow? Yeah, Tuesday. Yeah, we'll be back here tomorrow. Yeah, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. All right, very cool, very cool. Now let's keep one
This,
thing in mind. Sorry, I just want to make this
yes.
comment real quick. That Don Juan is we've been focused on will as a subtopic, but the point of this book and the whole bigger theme is about Carlos learning to capital P perceive energy directly. Yeah, Don Juan calls it seeing, but later on in the books he says this is not a good term and perceiving is better. He doesn't say perceiving is better, he just says seeing is not a good term. But he also alternatively, by implication, refers to it as perceiving, because that's what it is. It is perceiving with all of your senses, right? And that's why we change the word seeing to perceiving, so we don't fall into this trap of thinking it's something with the eyes. It's not. It's an entire whole mind, body, brain, body experience, right? You have to use all of you to do this. Very important. Very important. All right, so we'll pause there. Any thoughts about this, Beena? I mean, it's fascinating stuff,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes, and also about perceiving. Some we know that okay, we were doing something, and some we can say in as compared to these exercises, what Don Juan is doing,
Yeah.
some exercises were like a bit very very minute, very uh, not trivial but minute kind of exercises were in the art program. Remember, they were saying, okay, you have to understand without looking at the things. Try to do that. And one of the exercises now I'm aware of in the subcontinent, uh, they do with the watching the candle flame,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
flame, which is like
Yeah. So
gazing at that.
this is a universal practice
Okay,
for
okay.
perceiving. And there's
Yes.
in the Western world, it's called Beena Sidd. And there's the
Mm.
candle, and you stare at a bowl of water, and through the perceiving through the water. Don Juan is going to have this too. These are very universal techniques. It's quite
Okay.
fascinating, right? So being a
Yes.
seer is be that's why this term seeing is it's one I want to get away from, because it has a lot of baggage to it. And Don Juan's going to use this term later, being a seer. But it's fascinating that this is a local thing, the staring into the flame. I don't know how far back it goes, but this is part of um
Okay. So,
I want to say it's mystery type logic and thinking path,
yes.
perceiving other things. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, very interesting.
Okay. So one of them was okay. Like okay, there are many like sun gazing and moon gazing. People have that, and the candle gazing, and one of the exercises was to look at your eyes in the mirror, to gaze actually
Yes,
in your own
yes, correct.
eyes,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
um,
yeah.
and as a teenager, I tried that,
Oh, and what happened?
and that was really like horrifying for me because
Wow.
when I was looking at my in my eyes, after some time, my image always shift or turn into um, not a lion but a cub
Wow,
face,
very interesting.
and
Wow.
and
Wow.
especially so only the quarter of my face stays, but all the rest of the face turn into a cub face, which I was like, okay, no, it's something. No, I don't want that because in
Wow.
my mind, I was supposed to
Yeah,
see
yeah, yeah.
someone else or something else.
Right.
So,
So we see the problems here.
yes,
Expectations, assumptions, interpretations, and not understanding that you're perceiving and it's metaphoric.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was not doing that. But okay, this is what was happened with me, and I have this naturally, but my one of my astrology teacher who did all these exercises, just not just the gazing of flame and water and sun and moon, but also a dot gazing, just
Yeah.
gazing on a dot with a specific distance and like daily and doing that. So he says that they were not calling it perceiving. They were saying by this practice, you are able to control your sight,
Correct.
uh,
Correct. Correct.
not your vision. They say you are able to control your sight, and
Yeah.
he says that that is the reason I cannot drive in Karachi because my sight is very focused and controlled. So he says that okay, it is really overwhelming for me because I can see things before they're
Mhm.
coming to me
Yeah.
towards me, and also
Yeah.
things in a different way. So he said that's why he never drive. He says no, I cannot drive. And when I shared with
Wow.
him, but because I said okay, I never did that, but this is the problem with me that okay, I get super focused on something, like okay, if I'm looking forward, then I will forget to check in my rear and then
Yeah.
check the
Yeah.
side mirror and all that.
Yeah. You
He
get
says Beena,
immersed
because
in a direction or in a topic, in a point, in a focus. Yeah.
yes, yes, but also that okay, when things are coming. So I shared a lot of details, and he says that you have something naturally, but it is not deliberate. It is not trained. So you get like random things, okay, because you have this naturally.
Interesting.
So you get randomness in it. Yes,
Yeah.
but these exercises can actually really
All right.
groom. Yeah,
So let's put a pin in this for later.
yeah.
In later books, gazing, capital G, gazing is going to become a very big deal and a very specific practice that Don Juan has called us to. And he's going to talk a lot about gazing. Yeah.
And just today I realize I always have different meanings of my name, but Beena actually means perceiver. A person who can perceive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. Wow. That's wonderful,
because
Beena. That's
because it
wonderful.
is not about being like having, it is more than just seeing.
Yeah.
So now I understand
Perceiving
more.
is more than seeing. Exactly.
Yes, and this is what
Exactly.
actually Beena means.
Exactly. Perceiver. Oh, I like that.
Yes.
I like that.
I
I
don't
like
know
that.
how many things will unfold. Okay. And
Yeah.
thank you so much,
Very
sir.
important.
Thank you, and very
Oh,
interesting.
pleasure,
Yes,
pleasure.
yes.
Yes.
I'm
So
very keen
we're going to get
to read.
more into this, right? And you see
Yes,
now why it's so crucial, and that we change the terminology. Our
yes.
brains are hardwired to connect to language. This is why Way of Impeccability's alternate name is the language of conceptionality. Not conceiving, conceptionality. Very precise. When we understand how really precise and how associative our brain is with terminology and what terms mean and the associations, it's crucial to use appropriate conceptionality. Perceiving is very different to seeing. Seeing is only a part of it, right? Both in your personal experience, right, and with also with Don Juan. It's very, very key to use this appropriate conceptionality. Very, very key, right? You see in your own case how the assumptions that were associated with it and those
Yes,
associations, how they limited your
yes.
ability to understand. That's why Don Juan said this calling it seeing is limiting. People got lost in the idea of thinking it was with the eyes. We make this implications and associations are incredibly potent. We don't realize all that goes on inside our brains. That's why I changed it, because I do realize this and I am aware of it, and it's a massive, massive big deal, right? We'll get back to this. We'll
Oh,
get back
yes.
to this.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Thank you so
Conceptuality.
much for sharing details and providing us context of this, because otherwise these sharings
Yeah.
of Don Juan can be quite misleading, quite
Correct.
misleading. If you have
Correct.
a context,
Exactly.
if you
Unfortunately
don't have,
so. And that's
yes,
why capital D discernment is so crucial. And it's part of the capital R reading to apply this
yes,
particular discernment. Otherwise, we can miss what Don Juan is doing. And not because he's a
exactly. It
poor
can be misleading, it
communicator.
can be distracting,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it can be completely false
Right.
also, because
Right.
and very limiting, because I
Right.
feel really disrespected, disrespectful towards Don Juan, to limit him in just when the
Exactly.
medicinal things and all that.
Exactly.
So
And it's
yes.
inadvertent limitation.
Oh yes.
Inadvertent. And that's why we are really doing the capital R reading, so that we can apply this capital D discernment and get the fullness out of it, which is again Way of Impeccability. It takes that and goes further, right? Not only elucidating the fullness, but adding more also, right? Which I bring my own moreness to bear in there. Very
Oh
powerful
yes. Oh
stuff.
yes.
Very powerful stuff to bear.
Yes. So thank
All
you
right,
so much
brilliant,
for
brilliant.
sharing
We'll
this,
see
and
you
thank
guys
you so much
tomorrow.
for providing this. Yes, but
Yeah,
before we go, as always, please pay attention to your live algorithm and your online algorithm, because ultimately they are acting in the same way. Wherever you are going to focus your attention, uh, the universe is just going to maximize that. So please pay really, really, really crucial attention, critical attention towards where you are focusing on, because it is going to be maximized in your life. Universe is just assisting you to provide more value. Whatever you are going to focus on, it is going to be
yeah, yeah,
maximized.
yeah.
So don't be random, don't be clueless, don't be just okay, yeah, okay, whatever. No, please make deliberate choices in your online algorithm also, and your life algorithm.
Very
By
important.
doing so, you are going to make deliberate choice and train your algorithm to bring more such value in your life. Please do pay attention. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you guys tomorrow.
Yes. Bye bye. And I'll see you soon on Zoom, Bina. We have
Yes.
unfinished
Yes.
business.
After eating. After
All
eating.
right.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. See you soon. I'll wait for you there. All right. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye, everybody.